My name's Kirsty Kelly. I have the pleasure of introducing our inspirational speakers to the stage this afternoon. For those of you that just listened to James May's personal resilience described beautifully, if you get a chance to listen back to his session or read his book or meet him in person, he's a true inspiration. So I get all the best jobs because I get to introduce brilliant people that have not just a mission, but a hugely valuable message to share. We've all heard of Katy Piper, right? Katy Piper's, I think it's fair to say, a global success. But when I realized that she'd written a book talking about the answer to happiness, I was really intrigued. She's a speaker, an author, a TV presenter, a charity campaigner, and frankly, I've had a chance to spend some time with her, and she's rather lovely as well. So can I have a Wreckfest warm welcome, a round of applause for Katy Piper.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Cheers. Hello. Hi. I think I'm going to be the reason they turn the fans off, so I'm probably going to become the most unpopular person in this room. Thank you so much for coming here today. Now, when the unexpected happens, what should we do? I feel that I can speak confidently on this subject because my life changed forever at the age of 24 years old. Some people may already be familiar with my story. Some of you may not. Maybe you misheard and were expecting Katie Price. Sorry to disappoint, less equipment going on here. But yeah, my story has been well documented here in the UK and beyond. The story of a young woman being a victim of violence, facially disfigured by a hitman that was hired to attack me in broad daylight after I rejected a guy that I had begun to date. My recovery has also been documented through books and programs, my medical and psychological recovery that still carries on to present day. So for those that knew it wasn't Katy Price and have followed it, maybe you've seen my story in like a red top tabloid or in a woman's magazine, or maybe you read my first book titled Beautiful. So you'll see how they refer to my old life, my former career. They call me a former model and former TV presenter. That is such a generous description of my old life, and I'm absolutely going to run with it, because now you're seeing me in front of you in person here. You can see all 5'3" of me towering over you, and I'm in a heel today as well. So you know that I wasn't quite Claudia Schiffer when it came to the modelling world. And in terms of me being a former TV presenter, let's just say Holly Willoughby was not feeling threatened by my screen presence. I don't know if anyone in here watches channel 968 at 4 a.m. on a Monday. That was me. I was on the DIY channel selling cordless kettles, solar panelled lamps for the garden. I was also on the roulette channel, spinning the roulette wheel, even though I'd never set foot in a casino in my life. And then I worked on the quiz shows, the ones you'd call up for £3.50 a minute, unscramble that anagram, and the only person that wins is the producer. But you know what? I think you're getting the drift, that it was a young woman following her dreams, aspiring. My cost of living was that I rented a bedroom in a shared house. It was 2007. I think I needed to make 400 quid a month to live. I would pay my rent. I lived with other aspiring actresses, models, dancers, and we would only shop at midnight when they would reduce the meat with the reduced gun. So I suppose looking back at this time, early 20s, it was a career and a personal life that revolved not just around my looks, but my confidence, my levels of self-esteem. So I assume that that's the reason that when somebody wanted to hurt me, or actually in fact destroy me, they chose to throw industrial strength sulfuric acid at arm's length directly into my face. Now I was completely oblivious to what was about to happen to me in such formative years. And even if I hadn't been, nothing could have ever truly prepared me for how it would change my life as I know it and forevermore. I think it's fair to say that most people don't expect to spend all of their 20s in hospital and wake up in ICU blinded without their face. I think when I reflect on this time, and I'm sure there'll be people the age I was in the audience today, people in their early 20s here in this tent. When I reflect on that time in my early 20s, I do remember thinking disease, disability, sickness, well, that won't happen to me. You know, that's the sort of stuff I see on the news, in films. In fact, I don't even think it will happen to people I know directly. But then in about 30 seconds, or actually probably more likely less than 30 seconds, probably in 5 seconds, I was inflicted with all of the things that I have just listed. There is only one minority that everyone can wake up tomorrow, and that is disabled, disfigured. Every other minority, you are born that way. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are, your education, your social economic background, how careful you are. Everybody could wake up tomorrow with their life completely changed by being inflicted by that. But I am not what I've been through. I am not what happened to me in my 20s. I am, in fact, what I've conquered and what I've overcome. And the same goes for you too. I know without even speaking to people that there'll be people in this tent that are facing some kind of adversity of some form at the moment. To relate to what I'm going to be talking about in this session, you don't need to have been in an acid attack. But the fact is, what pain does is pain builds resilience, patience, and empathy in all of us, even the most impatient, because that's who I was before all of this. And what I've learned on my very long, I guess never-ending journey is two things in life change us all. One is pain, and the other is pleasure. And both in excess can completely destroy us. But for most people, the one that changes us the most is that pain, whether it's mental or physical, whether it's chronic, short, or long-term. So the secret of success is learning how to use pain and pleasure instead of having pain and pleasure use you. Now, if you do that, what it means is that you're in control of your life. If you don't do that, you unravel and life starts to control you with the tightest grip. As you can imagine, it wasn't a case of me waking up and recovering and being the person you see here today. I absolutely battled with a lot of the mental recovery, post-traumatic stress, depression, and a lot of anxiety throughout my recovery. And through the people that I've met, whether it's through my career or whether it's through my charity, I do think that anxiety seems to be a part of most people's lives in some kind of varying degrees. But we don't just suddenly go into anxiety and just stay there for the rest of our lives. Anxiety is something that is very much transient. We do change, for better, for worse. It ebbs and it flows. And actually, contrary to popular beliefs and my own experience, difficulties do not come into your life to destroy you. But actually what they do is they help you. It may not feel like that in the moment. What they help you to do is they help you to realize your potential. Because we all go through life underestimating ourselves until we have no choice. They help you tap into that hidden power, but only if you let your difficulties know that you too can be difficult. So what happened for me with my difficulties? Well, I'll tell you, I found my why. What a privilege. Can you imagine finding your why in your 20s? It's literally the one thing we have in common. It's the universal thing. It doesn't matter how wealthy or how successful you are, that can sometimes be irrelevant if you haven't found your why. Some of us are on this never-ending quest and we don't arrive, we don't find it. But we're definitely all searching for it. I think usually when you form some kind of legacy, when you make a positive impact, that's when you find your why. And I never want to credit what happened to me or credit the people that did it to me for who I am or what my life's become. But trauma didn't destroy me, trauma transformed me. And like I said, it is part of everybody's life, trauma on some degree. But it needn't be a life sentence. It needn't be the noose around your neck. So as I started to recover, I knew that I wanted to help other people. And I think for anyone that's gone to a dark place and received support, sometimes from the most unexpected places, sometimes let down by the people you thought would be the support network, once you have experienced those feelings of feeling so desperate, we've all experienced desperation. I know I've experienced desperation. Once you've been to that place, you can no longer turn your back on others that are currently feeling that way too. Now, with this great sort of pain, you do find this great strength, great resilience, and like I said, this great purpose, but that also comes with a caveat. There is great responsibility. So what happened to me is I decided to set up a charity because, I wasn't in an accident. Like, my injuries were man-made, if you like. They had an intention. And I had a different idea behind that, somebody underestimated me. They decided that my exterior, if that was altered or destroyed, then so would the rest of me, and that I would give up. Well, I set up the Katy Piper Foundation in the UK. It would be a whole other talk if I told you about that, but I will give you a little snippet. I made a documentary documenting my recovery on Channel 4, and one of the things that happened after that is Simon Cowell's team got in touch with the press people at Channel 4, and they rang me and said, he wants to talk to you, can we give him your number? I had no friends and no job. I was on disability benefit and job seekers allowance. I was agoraphobic, back living in my childhood bedroom in Hampshire. And I said to the press, I had a Nokia as well, a Nokia Snake, right? Because I'd opted out of email, I'd opted out of internet and phone, and I had 7 contacts in that Nokia. It was like lawyers, doctors, switchboard to the hospital, mum, dad, and my siblings. And I said, no, I'm not going to give my number out. I've had enough crazy people in my life. There's no way it's Simon Cowell. I can't imagine Simon at home, microwave meal for one, channel surfing, stumbling across this documentary. And the presswoman said, look, we've checked it out. It really is him. Just give him your number. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll take his and I'll call him. So I 141'd him so that he couldn't get mine. And he answered the phone. It was the evening time. It was like 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And he answered the phone, that really iconic voice that you can't mistake for anybody else. And we chatted. It just flowed. We chatted about what had happened to me. He was very angry about what had happened to me. And he invited me up to his offices in Kensington. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't use public transport. I'm scared to leave the house. And he said, it's fine, I'll send you a chauffeur. So a couple of days later, I went up to his office. I was wearing a plastic face mask because that was part of my rehab, my recovery. First thing he did was offer me a ciggy. It was a Super King's menthol. And I was like, Simon, I've got a lot going on here. I don't think it's time for me to smoke a Super King. It's not going to fit through the mask. And he offered me a job, right? He offered me a job as a runner for his production company. And can you imagine the old me on the DIY channel getting offered that job? I would have started that moment in that second in that office. But I thought long and hard, and I said, look, I have to turn that down. I have to turn that job down because I've experienced a different mindset and a different recovery to becoming facially disfigured. I found better treatment abroad. I found new levels of confidence, and I found a way that burn survivors can feel sexy, can feel strong, can just not get a mediocre life, can get any life they want, can be the CEO, can get married, can be a trailblazer. and I need investment to set up this charity, and I want you to help me found this charity and become a partner with me. And he was like, interesting. No one's ever turned me down for a job. I like this. And he told me to go away and write a business plan. And I did that. And short version of this is he's still the patron 16 years later. And what we've gone on to do is launch the very first residential rehab centre for burn survivors in the UK. So we are a medical facility that we hire physios, OTs, we work with surgeons, we take our referrals from the NHS. So we have our rehab, scar management, then we have our holistic wellness, where we have, ice baths, sound baths, psychiatric care, counselling. Then we have getting your mojo back, my side that I run, where it's makeup, hair extensions, outfits, careers, jobs, sex and intimacy, dating, interview techniques, shopping, clothing, mentoring. We are an extended arm of support to say, yes, you absolutely can. And I'm so proud to say in all those years, I have never been to a funeral of any of our survivors, but I have been to weddings, I have met newborn babies, I have been to parties, I have been to launch events for people's businesses. And I like to think that as a group, as an organisation, we have changed the recovery for those with facial disfigurement and burns. So that's my why, and that's my story of how pain built change and built resilience in me. And I do believe also it built patience and empathy in me, which is something I didn't have in abundance as a young 20-year-old. I think also what pain is it's the start of something new in our lives. And actually, contrary to popular belief, it's not the dark times that we should fear in life. Yes, they're rough. Yes, they're rocky. Yes, we can't make sense of them immediately, but we're not supposed to. You're not supposed to understand things. You're not supposed to have the answer for everything. And I tell burn survivors that when I mentor them. I'm a realist. It's permanent. We can't take it away. You can't make sense of it right now. But what those difficult times can do is they can give you your why. Everyone asks me about that, how to find it. I can't answer that for you. But what I can tell you is nobody ever found their why on a mediocre day. And it's an interesting question, isn't it? When do people start living? I'll tell you when people start living, 90% is when they start dying. That's when people make the bucket lists, when they're terminal. When you read those books by palliative care nurses, that's when people reflect on all the should have done this, shouldn't have done that. And I suppose I can relate to it too. And that's what I've chosen to talk to you about in today's session. Because as you can imagine, it's been 17 years since I was injured, and so much has happened. So I wanted to specifically talk to you about the 3 times in my life when I thought I was going to die and what happened inside. So first time, the obvious time, the acid was thrown at me in the high street, 5 p.m, rush hour, broad daylight. There's no words in my vocabulary to describe to you how that felt. All I can tell you is I thought somebody had thrown petrol over me and flicked a match at me because of the head to toe intensity of pain and the heat. So what I learned in that moment, right, in those seconds, is that it can all change in an instant. A click of the fingers, everything you know has changed. And we do have a bucket list. Okay, some people are visual, they have a journal, they put pen to paper. I know everyone in here just has a mental bucket list of, I'll get this done when I lose weight. I'll approach that person when I look better. I'll apply for that job when I've done that course. There's always that but, because we think we're not good enough, right? I guess my bucket list now is on my notes in my iPhone. So in that moment on that high street, I started to get almost like old-fashioned film or like an Instagram reel. It was like rotating through my head, all these different people that I had had connections with and knew. All the people I'd wanted to reach out to but hadn't out of stubbornness, pride and ego. All the things I'd wanted to do, but again, lack of self-belief had held me back. Bridges that now weren't going to be mended. Experiences I thought I was going to have, but never put myself out there to do. And I thought to myself, if for some radical way I walk away from this and I survive, I no longer want to postpone anything in life. And that urgency and that lack of ego has completely changed the way I seek purpose and approach my life in present day. The second, this was quite immediately afterwards. I was laying in the ambulance. It's funny the things you think of in absolute crisis. Guys, you might not relate to this. Basically, as women, sometimes when we're just like running to do an errand, we don't put a bra on, right? So that day, I was in like a tracksuit. I just ran out the house to go and get something from the post office. I had no bra on, and I was kind of depressed that day. I also had no pants on. It's not a regular thing for me, but it was that day. And when I was in the ambulance, my clothes, because it's corrosive substance, my clothes were getting stuck to me. So they started to cut all my clothes off, and I was drifting in and out of consciousness. And I heard the paramedic. It was a woman. She said it to the male paramedic. She's got no underwear on, this woman. And I just remember feeling embarrassed. And then I started to get this other symptom. And this symptom was in my stomach. So it wasn't the obvious areas of pain and the burn injury. And again, I started to sort of see people in like vibrant colors of the clothes they were wearing. It was all the people I'd had relationships with, not sexual relationships. It was like friends, family, colleagues, landlords, people I'd met through the gym, hobbies. And I'd started to think about the way I'd spoke to those people, my reply on texts, the calls I'd sim from my mum and dad and I'd just put it back in my pocket, or people I'd even press red on because I felt I was too busy. And that feeling in my stomach, that ache, that symptom, it was regret, deep, deep emotional regret. I decided again, if I was going to come back, I needed to eliminate this negative energy, this busy woman syndrome, this they'll be all right, I'll pick up with them later on, it doesn't matter, they'll always be there, I can phone them when I'm ready. Now today, present life, I don't communicate with people like that. I answer the phone, I call them back, I stop, I put things down, and I make time for those people I love. The third and final time was some months later. I basically lived in the hospital. I was in a coma. Anyone that's ever been in ICU, whether it's as a patient or maybe you've been in ICU for a loved one, you'll know it's this paradox of a really noisy place full of beeping and whirring of all the machines that keep you alive. In another way, it's a deathly silent place because all your neighbors are unconscious and everyone's whispering and no one's speaking. So I had this weird experience of coming out of a coma sometime later, and I was blinded in both eyes originally. It is so weird to go blind as an adult rather than be born blind. So I opened my eyes to pitch black. So very presumptuous of me, considering the quite wild life I'd led in my teens and 20s. I presumed I was in heaven because I could feel, I could hear, but I couldn't see. And again, I thought, wow, I guess dying isn't that scary after all. It's the only certainty in life. It's the one thing we'd all been preparing for all of our lives. But I started to get the physical symptom again. Not in my stomach this time. The physical symptom was in the left-hand side of my chest, and it was kind of creeping all across my chest, real acute pain. This time it wasn't so much regret. It was a deep, deep sadness. Really knowing the truth that my life had been so centered around myself. I'd been so obsessed with this success. It had been a tunnel all about me. There had been no not-for-profit arm. There had been no consideration of other people or mentoring of others. There had been no legacy other than my own selfish quest. Again, I said to myself, if I come back from this, I need to make an impact. I need to think outside of this solo journey. So what I didn't realize on each of those 3 days that I've just shared with you is I was given the gift of a miracle each time, 3 times. It's not the obvious gift of not dying. It's the gift of kind of dying, right? And going to that place terminal people go to. Going to that place that people in hospices and palliative care go to. almost hovering over my own body, feeling sadness, feeling regret, being able to reflect and come back and live differently. So what do I want you to do now? What do I want to do with that intimate information I've just shared with you? I want you to be completely honest with yourself. Are you proud of all your communication to loved ones, to friends, to colleagues? Do you have a not good enough tape in your head that tells you when I lose weight, when I'm more qualified, when I meet someone, when I'm not single? What are you putting off because you think you're not good enough? What are you not getting done because you think you've got loads of time? Just go to a place right now and picture yourself in only one of the scenarios I found myself. On the street being attacked, in the ambulance losing consciousness and clothes, or waking up in ICU blind. What would you get done? How would you change your energy, your relationships, your career goals, because you think that you will be here forever? Now, there's something that I do every single year, and this was a massive part of my recovery to get back to work, to become professional. And it was making 4 important decisions. And I believe everybody should be able to answer these decisions at any given time. Who do I give my love to? What do I do for money? How do I serve others? And how do I feel about myself? If over the next few days, or maybe even weeks, possibly months, it might take you to answer those 4 questions honestly, you might have to ask people around you for the truth as well, then you will begin to live intentionally. And when I answered those questions for myself in the kind of immediate aftermath of recovering, I was able to not just set up my charity, but start to set up a commercial arm of my life too. I wrote books, I made TV shows, and both complemented one another with my not-for-profit as well. But all of it has been an endurance, because it was still a world that primarily operates on rejection and telling you that you're not good enough. But my trauma made me realize how strong I could be and how I could access this resilience to block the outside noise out, to decide what my worth was and what it was based on, and that it wasn't something as fragile as the surface. I think I almost began to enjoy people's low expectation of me. Proving them wrong was something that spurred me on even more. It's funny because I just recently turned 40, and in my 20s I experienced this reaction. I'm not saying just men, it's from women as well, internalized misogyny from women, and I'm guilty of it too. But this reaction in my 20s that if you're no longer beautiful, you are less valuable, you will be less successful, that a young woman, her beauty is her worth, is her power. And as I turned 40, I got hit with the same stuff, but this time around youth. That youth is so important for women. It's the only power they possess. So I decided to write a new book called Still Beautiful. And this is all about beauty, aging, taking up space. Because actually what happened to me is I became, by Western standards, not symmetrical, the least beautiful in the room, in the peer group. And now in my 40s, not the youngest in my peer group. But I am one of the most powerful. So in that book, I worked on that message, talking particularly to younger people. We get told our 20s is our heyday, right? I'm not buying it. Our 20s, we're our least experienced, our least financially stable, our least successful. These decades of 40s, and I hope 50s, 60s, and beyond, they're where we know who we are. They're where we have that unshakable confidence and high levels of self-esteem. Now, I do appreciate some parts of my story are shocking and heavy, but I believe that my personal story is not one of misery. I actually believe it's one of hope. And I meet many other people like me through my foundation who also inspire me with hope after their stories of facing adversity. As humans, we can survive for 3 weeks without food. We can survive without water for 3 days, and we can survive without air for 3 minutes. But the one thing we cannot survive without is hope. And when I used to say that pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, we'd be like, hope, what is she talking about? That is so airy-fairy. That is so fluffy and so new age. Yeah? But when you sat around the telly and heard Boris's bulletins every Friday, and he kept changing the goalposts from 6 weeks to 8 weeks to 3 months, we all started to lose hope. And when we couldn't see an end point and the heat wave ended and it started raining and we weren't going back to work, even the most robust amongst us started to experience mental health problems. Do not underestimate the power of hope. Giving hope to others when you're in a position to be able to do so is so very important. But what I want you to know about hope is we have this weird culture, like British culture, of celebrity and of putting people on pedestals, impossible pedestals, because nobody is perfect. And I often get this word associated with me, you're an inspiration. That does other people a disservice, because then we disconnect and say, well, they're this special kind of person that can achieve this special kind of thing. It is not true. What it is that you see inside those people is the human spirit. The human spirit is in each and every one of us. And it is incredible. Ill bodies can be broken and shattered, but the human spirit is in the core and it remains intact. What happens, though, is some people don't get to meet their human spirit till later in life, typically with old age and diseases and illnesses related to living longer. Some people like me have to tap into the human spirit earlier than others. But it's amazing that we all have this inside us. That means when we meet adversity, we will survive. But to survive in life, you must never be rigid. We saw that in lockdown as well, right? We cannot be rigid, we must be malleable. We must be willing to adapt. We must be willing to able to reinvent and evolve. So actually what my story illustrates is that we must not fear change. We must not fear control. We can stand up and stare fear in the face and ask the question, what can I learn from this experience? I had a turning point in my life when I realized that you just have to let go. Let go of what you thought should have happened in your life, in your relationship, in your career, and live in what exactly is happening. Live in the past, you are depressed, you are stagnant, you are still. You are avoided by people because you go on and on about the same thing and you hold others back. Live in the future, you are highly strung, you are anxious, and you will be depleted of energy dealing with something over here when what's really going to happen is over here. If you live in the present tense, in what is happening, you are full of energy, healing, and progress in abundance. Now, even in my darkest hours, I always had a goal, and I absolutely hate this culture of girl boss, supermom. I don't subscribe to being compared to a fictional character. It makes other women and other men feel really bad that they're not able to sustain all areas of their life, personal, professional, health. So actually, sometimes we have to acknowledge a vision can be the tiniest thing, but it's about not drifting around. It's about not being stagnant. And actually, sometimes the mundane parts of life are the things that really challenge people's mental health. And they think that everyone else doesn't have mundane parts of their life. Well, I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes that I have in my journal. You might already be familiar with it. It's quite a famous quote. Life is amazing, then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and awful, it's ordinary, mundane, and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and just exhale during the ordinary. Because that is living heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it is breathtakingly beautiful. Now that may seem like very simple advice, but it's also incredibly valuable. For me, I'm a realist, right? Yes, my attackers, those two men, they were able to take my looks, interrupt my youth, my younger years, and destroy some of my senses. Blind me from the world that I knew. but they could only touch what you could see. Because you see, same goes for you. If there is somebody or something in your life that is affecting you negatively right now, I want to tell you that they can only touch what they can see, the surface. And let me tell you something about the surface on everybody, no matter what you look like or what your levels of success are. The surface is so temporary. The surface is so fragile, so transient. You can touch somebody all over, but you can never, ever own another. These are mine, my spirit, my soul, and they remain forever untouchable. If you take just one thing away from what I've shared with you today, I really want it to be that what happens to us, what's forced upon us in life, does not define us unless we want to. I understand choices are taken out of our hands. I understand sometimes we feel violated, but what we choose to do with it afterwards is absolutely within our control. You are creating your own life right now, so please always do yourself the justice of making it outstanding. Thank you so much for listening to me. I've loved talking to you.